In this lesson, let's learn about scientific models. Imagine holding a grain of dust in your hand. Inside a tiny speck are countless atoms, so small that even the most powerful microscopes can't reveal them. Now zoom out. Beyond Earth, planets orbit the Sun, and our Sun is just one of billions in the Milky Way. These are scales far too tiny or far too vast for our eyes to ever see. And yet, we talk about atoms as if we know them. We describe galaxies as if we've traveled through them. We even map the spiraling structures of DNA, hidden inside every living cell. So how do we study what's too small to see, like atoms, or too massive and distant, like galaxies? The answer is models. Scientists build models to explain what we cannot observe directly. By the end of this video, you should be able to do 3 things. First, explain why scientists need models to study things that are too small, too large, or too far away. Second, identify different types of models, from simple diagrams to physical replicas to computer simulations. And third, describe both the strengths and the limits of models, and why they are not exact copies of reality, but useful tools for understanding the unseen. So let's start with a simple question. What exactly is a scientific model? A model is a simplified representation of a system, object, or process. It helps us explain, explore, or even predict things that we cannot observe directly. You can think of it like a map. A map doesn't show every tree or building, but it shows the roads you need to get from one place to another. In the same way, a scientific model doesn't capture every detail of reality, but it highlights the parts that matter most for the question at hand. Why do scientists rely on models? Because so much of science involves things that are either too small, too large, too fast, too slow, or sometimes too dangerous for us to study directly. Models let us work around those limits. They allow us to imagine possibilities, test predictions, and communicate complex ideas clearly. Now, scientists use many different types of models, and we can group them into 4 broad categories: physical models, conceptual or visual models, mathematical models, and computer models. Let's go through each one of them. First, physical models. These are tangible objects you can hold, rotate, or observe closely. For example, a globe represents the Earth. A skeleton model shows us the structure of bones and joints. A plastic double helix gives students an immediate sense of how DNA is shaped. One famous story comes from 1953, when James Watson and Francis Crick were trying to figure out the structure of DNA. They built a physical paper and wire model, testing how the base might pair. That model turned an idea into a convincing structure. Physical models are powerful because they make the abstract concrete. But they also have limits. A globe shows continents and oceans, but not climate patterns or time zones. The DNA model shows structure, but not how DNA copies itself or how genes are expressed. So physical models capture shape and form, but often miss processes. The second type is conceptual or visual models. These are drawings, diagrams, or flowcharts that represent relationships. Think of the Bohr model of the atom. electrons orbiting neatly in circles. It's not 100% true, but it gave people an image to work with. Cell diagrams label organelles, so we now know what's inside and how they connect. Even our early solar system models, like the Earth-centered system of Ptolemy, were conceptual. Later, Copernicus simplified it into a sun-centered system, which better fit the data. These examples remind us that conceptual models are stepping stones. They are excellent teaching tools, but they can be misleading if we forget they are only approximations. For example, electrons don't actually orbit in neat circles. Modern models show them as probability clouds, and that's a major upgrade in accuracy, but it's harder to draw on paper. The third type is mathematical models. These are equations that describe relationships and make predictions. Newton's laws are a classic example. With a formula, we can predict exactly how a ball will travel when thrown. Ecologists use equations for population growth, predicting whether a species will expand rapidly or stabilize. The power of mathematical models is precision. They turn words and assumptions into numbers we can calculate. But again, there are limits. Those differences can lead to predictions that don't match reality. And finally, we have computer models and simulations. These are mathematical models taken to the next level, using computing power to handle complexity. For example, climate models combine physics, chemistry, and fluid dynamics across the entire planet to predict future temperature and rainfall. Astronomers simulate galaxies to see how stars and black holes interact over billions of years. Pilots train on flight simulators that recreate real-world emergencies. These models are invaluable because they let us test scenarios that would be impossible, dangerous, or impractical in real life. But like all models, they have assumptions and limitations. Climate models cannot perfectly capture every detail of the atmosphere. That's why scientists run many versions called ensembles to show a range of possible outcomes. No matter the type, physical, conceptual, mathematical, or computer, every model does the same thing. It shows us some parts of reality, but leaves out others. And that's okay. A model isn't necessarily the real thing. It's a tool to help us understand. What matters is how useful it is. Scientists test models, look for where they don't work, and then improve them. This process of making, testing, and fixing models is one of the main ways science keeps moving forward. So what did we learn today? Remember that scientists use models to study things that are too small, too big, or too complex to see directly. We look at different types like physical models, like globes and DNA structures, conceptual models like the particle model of matter, mathematical models that use equations, and computer models for things like weather. Each model has strengths and weaknesses, but all of them are tools to help us make sense of the world. The big idea to remember is this: models aren't perfect copies of reality, but they help us ask better questions, test ideas, and move science forward. Thanks for watching! Like and subscribe for more videos coming soon. And that's it for today. See you next time and stay curious.